Spider-Man is considered a street-level hero, which often means that a lot of his villains are also taken at face value as street-level villains, when in many cases they actually have the potential to be full-on global or even intergalactic threats. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Join me as we count down the top 10 Spider-Man villains that are more powerful than you might initially think. Number 10. J. Jonah Jameson. While JJ might not seem like the craziest supervillain out there, he has his moments, truly. Sure, he's just a guy who most of the time causes Spider-Man more grief in his civilian identity of Peter Parker as his loudmouthed, often angry and demanding boss, but if he gets his hands on robots, whew, watch out. JJ isn't at the level of world domination underestimation, but for the most part, Spider-Man fans generally just think of JJ as a nuisance, a menace, if you will, to Peter's everyday life. However, JJ has not only threatened Peter's livelihood and Spider-Man's reputation, but has also even gone toe-to-toe with Spider-Man himself, and even at one point took on She-Hulk. Typically, he's at his most dangerous whenever he gets his hands on the Spider Slayer robots or armor, which he often uses to more directly hunt Spider-Man or other heroes down himself, using muscles, or robo-muscles I guess, as opposed to just the written word. And let's not forget that the written word and media itself are also way more powerful than we maybe give them credit for, both in the comics and in real life. Number 9. Sandman. The only thing that really holds Sandman back from being so deadly is his own disinterest in crime. In the end, Sandman often resents what he has become and even grows to resent being a criminal. There are even times in the comics when Sandman has tried to turn over a new leaf and go against his story as a villain, becoming reformed, preferring to stay neutral, lawful, and of course even at times teaming up and aiding heroes. This is really what holds him back though. That, and in some cases, the vacuum cleaner. Though really that shouldn't have been able to hold Sandman at all, considering that he can control the sand that makes him up, which means that, yeah, he can just kinda like move out of the vacuum cleaner, right? As sand particles. Sand is a powerful substance. It can cut you, it can get inside a wound, it's minuscule, it can get through and into almost any room or location, as it can pass through the smallest nooks and crannies. Sandman is also virtually immortal and can create duplicates of himself, allowing him to access a giant form by balling up all of these duplicates together. Now imagine if he did something like this, but on the scale of all of the sand in the world. Let's not forget that scientists have estimated that there are more grains of sand on planet Earth than stars within our universe. I know stars are bigger than grains of sand, but still, there's a lot of sand on this planet, like a lot of sand. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Spider-Man villains, let us know by clicking that like button. Number 8. Morbius. Another villain that is really only curbed, I think, because of his often more heroic nature and sense of humanity is Morbius. Okay, so Morbius might not be a global level threat like we were talking about in the intro, but he's definitely more powerful than you might think. A lot of people probably don't think about Morbius much at all, I imagine, but like the lizard, if he's completely feral and unreserved, he's pretty dangerous. Recently in the comics, we saw that Morbius is back to being a fearsome, uncontrolled, ruled by his hunger, pseudo-science vampire, when he comes up against Ben Reilly's Spider-Man during the Beyond Spider-Man event. Ben struggled to fight against Morbius, and if it wasn't for some help from Beyond, he may have even died as a result of their battle. In the end, it took the Daughters of the Dragon duo, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, together to take down Morbius, and even then, they may have only been able to do so because Morbius at that point was missing an arm. Dr. Michael Morbius can be quite strong when his power is completely unleashed, and there's nothing holding him back. Number 7. Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson isn't a villain anymore in the comics, but he did start out as one. And from his humble beginnings, you likely would not have imagined that he'd become so powerful as a character. Flash Thompson started out as Peter Parker's schoolyard bully. He didn't have any powers, he was just kind of a jerk. Over time though, Flash became less of an oaf and eventually even became a friend to Peter. He then goes on to serve in the military, becoming a decorated hero, and even becomes a superhero after he becomes Agent Venom, teaming up with the Venom symbiote, who also has a villainous origin story. Sure, Agent Anti-Venom, aka Flash Thompson, probably won't be the guy threatening the entire world, because, well, he's a hero, but he definitely now possesses enough power to instead be a hero who could potentially save the world. And considering that he was just your average run-of-the-mill high school bully, you probably wouldn't have expected him to come so far. Number 6. Sauron. I've always felt bad for Sauron. Like, this dude does not get enough love when it comes to our boosting of supervillains here on the channel. I know Sauron seems kinda silly on paper, but he's also pretty diabolical and deadly when he wants to be. And if the person writing the character also believes in his prowess. Sauron can temporarily absorb mutant powers, is super strong, and somehow has functional pterodactyl hands that he can use to pick up weapons and items. I don't even know how he does that. That's nuts to me. Sauron is also an energy vampire, which means his powers are literally deadly. He needs life force energy to live, and when he absorbs life force energy, it can actually result in the death of his victim. Honestly, I think if he just had the right team up, he could be pretty unstoppable. Maybe with X-Men Green he'll be able to do something crazy. I really want X-Men Green to be like a super villain team. Like kinda like Poison Ivy, like we're villains but we're like saving the planet. Number 5. Sin Eater. Sin Eater saw a massive power upgrade recently. Initially he was just a crazed man obsessed with absolving the sins of others through killing them. But more recently, in Nick Spencer's run on Spider-Man in 2020, he became so much more than that. In issue number 46, we see Sin Eater with newfound powers to actually absorb and absolve the sin of villains, and with those sins, he would also gain their powers. This meant that the sky was almost the limit for just how powerful of a villain Sin Eater could become. However, after learning that he was being manipulated by Kindred and kinda used as a pawn, Sin Eater became distraught and ended up taking his own life. He would later be resurrected as a corpse, but we don't really know what happened to said corpse after he was brought back and the fight against Kindred sort of came to a close. He could still be out there somewhere though, and who knows, he could have some of his former hyped up powers. I doubt it, but even if he doesn't, he did have it at one point, so I think we should count it. It was pretty cool. Number 4. Chameleon. Chameleon is definitely a hero who deserves more love and respect, or at least more disdain if you love to hate the greatest villains. He was the first villain that Spider-Man ever faced in his own series. A lot of people don't think of shapeshifters or masters of disguise first when it comes to power levels, but the reality is someone who is really good at disguising themselves as other people can be one of the most deadly and unstoppable villains around. I mean, look at what Mystique managed to do recently in X-Men's Inferno series, or look at what Chameleon might seemingly be up to currently in Devil's Reign. Not only is Chameleon great at creating chaos and hurting others by disguising himself as them, but he also is pretty good at just hatching plans as well. Number 3. Kingpin. When it comes to Kingpin, we usually think of him as a threat confined to New York City. In fact, some people don't even think of Kingpin at all when it comes to Spider-Man. Over the years, Kingpin has become more synonymous with the superhero Daredevil, even though Kingpin's first appearance was actually in a Spider-Man comic, making his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50 during the original 1963 series. Lately in the comics, Kingpin has been setting his sights on a much more grand prize than just causing grief for New York, its citizens, and its heroes. He is taking on all of the superheroes based in the US that oppose him as he aims to run for president, using Kilgrave, yes, the Purple Man's powers, to encourage everyone to vote for him. Or else. Superheroes who do not ally themselves with Kingpin in this endeavor will face his wrath during Marvel's Devil's Reign event. Number 2. Mysterio. Another villain that often gets dismissed when it comes to Spider-Man's rogues gallery is Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors, and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be not so real of a threat. Still, in the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely fool the entire world, or while even being defeated, he kind of still did that. His plan here was to convince everyone that he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even despite seemingly dying, he actually still managed to kind of succeed. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating pretty much all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting Wolverine to kill the entire X-Men team and the school. Yikes. In other words, just because you think something isn't real doesn't mean that you shouldn't still fear it and that it can't still hurt you. A great illusion can be more powerful than actual action in some cases. Number 1. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is a villain that might be well respected among Spider-Man fans, but on a greater scale, he's not likely someone you think of when you think of a global level supervillain threat. But while he might not share the status of comic book villains like Doctor Doom, it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to instill that level of fear among the superhero community. Dr. Octopus might seem a bit silly with his haircut and his mechanical arms and his sometimes snazzy white suit and sunglasses, but let's not forget that he's actually a diabolical super genius whose brilliance combined with the sheer strength of his claws makes him a dangerous person to cross. Some might say he's just superior. Who are some of your favorite Spider-Man villains? Which do you think are the most powerful? Which do you think are super underrated? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I am your host Amanda McKnight. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.